my friend, and welcome to the study. Today we're going to look at the artist, illustrator and author Tove Jansson, famous for, among many things, the Moomintroll. So I will be showing you some of her marvelous, fantastical drawings. We'll be reading some of her personal letters and looking at a few of her books and illustrations and artwork, as well as listening to a little bit of her biography. There will be lots of book sounds, paper, and beautiful pictures for you to relax. Your imagination and your intellect. I have the window open today so we can hear the sounds of nature, the fountain and some birds, as we learn about Tove Jansson. Tove was born on 9th of August 1914 in Helsinki, in the Grand Duchy of Finland, of what was then the Russian Empire, to a Swedish-speaking family. Her father was a sculptor and her mother was a graphic designer and illustrator. And Tove grew up in Finland, where it's dark in the winter and jubilant in the summer, holidaying on the islands close to nature, living a very bohemian life with her family. When she was 4 years old, the Finnish Civil War took place in 1918, in which her father took part, bringing home stories. Tove's younger brothers were born when she was 6, Per Olof Jansson, a photographer, and Lars Jansson, an author and cartoonist. Tove was very close to her family, especially her mother and father with whom she travelled. And she enjoyed being aunt to her nephews and nieces. The family home was in Helsinki, and they spent summers in a cottage on an island near Turku, east of Helsinki, where she would find inspiration for many of her stories and illustrations. When she was 14, Tove wrote and illustrated her first picture book, Sarah och Belle och Nekens Blackfiskar, or Sarah and Belle and Neptune's Children, the Octopuses. It was published in 1933, and Tove received 500 Finnish marks for it. She also sold drawings that were published in magazines in the 1920s. Tove studied at the University College of Arts, Crafts and Design in Stockholm from 1930 to 1933, the Graphic School of the Finnish Academy of Fine Arts until 1937, and finally at l'École d'Adrien and l'École des Beaux-Arts in Paris in 1938. She displayed a number of artworks in exhibitions during the 30s and 40s, and her first solo exhibition was held in 1943. One of her murals is still in Helsinki and displays the society of the time in color and character. During the 1930s, Tove made several trips to other European countries. She drew from these for her short stories stories and articles, which she also illustrated, and which were also published in magazines, periodicals, and daily newspapers. During this period, she also designed many book covers, adverts, and postcards. Following her mother's example, she drew illustrations for Garm, an anti-fascist Finnish-Swedish satirical magazine. Being in Finland during those early years of the war probably had a big impact on Tove. Finland was precariously positioned both politically and geographically between the Nazi Third Reich and the Red Soviet Union, Finland having seceded from the Soviet Union as a white area. From 1944 until 2001, Tove lived in Helsinki. She had several male lovers, including the political philosopher Atos Virtanen, to whom she was briefly engaged. She also developed a secret love affair with the married theatre director Vivica Bandla. During later studies, in 1956, Tove met her future partner, Tulikki Pietilä, or Tutti, as she was known. In Helsinki, they lived separately, visiting each other secretly through an attic passageway. In the 1960s, they built a house on a tiny uninhabited island in the Gulf of Finland, 100 kilometers from Helsinki, where they would escape for the summer months. They collaborated on many projects, including a model of the Moomin house. From the 1930s to the 50s, Tove worked as an illustrator and cartoonist for the Christmas magazines Julen and Lucifer, just as her mother had earlier, and her brother would after her. And she provided political cartoons for the satirical magazine Garm, as well as several comic strips, and that's where her first Moomin appeared. The name Moomin comes from Tove's uncle Einar Hammarsten. When she was studying in Stockholm and living with her Swedish relatives, her uncle told her that a Moomintroll lived in the kitchen closet and breathed cold air down people's necks if they tried to sneak some food. This undoubtedly contributed to the vivid, wild imagination that became Tove's illustrated and artistic world. In addition to providing the illustrations for her own Moomin books, Tove also illustrated Swedish translations of classics, including Tolkien's The Hobbit and Lewis Carroll's The Hunting of the Snark and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. You can see that her interpretation of Gollum is very unique and perhaps very Finnish, especially as Tolkien himself took many of his ideas from medieval epics, but particularly the Finnish Edda saga. In 1972, Tove illustrated her own work called The Summer Book, about a girl who spends the summer on an island with her grandmother. This is Tove's first Moomin book, The Moomins and the Great Flood, published in 1945, telling of Moomin Mama and Moomintroll's flight through a dark and scary forest. was the first ever Moomin book, originally published in Finland in 1945. Tove Jansson wrote the following preface when the story was reprinted in Scandinavia in 1991, after being out of print for many years. It was the winter of war in 1939. One's work stood still. It felt completely pointless to try to create pictures. Perhaps it was understandable that I suddenly felt an urge to write down something that was to begin with once upon a time. What followed had to be a fairy tale. That was inevitable. But I excused myself with avoiding princes, princesses, and small children, and chose instead my angry signature character from the cartoons, and called him the Moomintroll. The half-written story was forgotten until 1945. Then a friend pointed out that it could become a children's book. Just finish it and illustrate it. Maybe they will want it. The story is quite influenced by the childhood books I had read and loved. A bit of Jules Verne, some Collodi, the girl with the blue hair, and so on. But why not? Anyhow, here was my very first happy ending. Tove Jansson. You can see all of her beautiful artwork throughout the book, coming from a very active imagination and a happy talent for illustration. The popularity of the Moomins is attested in subsequent theatre and opera pieces, as well as among many other media. Tove also wrote and illustrated 4 original picture books in addition to her Moomintroll series. Her semi-autobiographical novel, Bildhuggarens dotter, The Sculptor's Daughter, published in 1968. Her father had a huge studio, and Tove herself was the model for several of his sculptures, some of which are still on display. Following the Moomins and the Great Flood was a comet in Moominland in 1946, and in 1948, Finn family Moomintroll, and several more, seeing the Moomins grow in popularity. My favorite part of Finn family Moomintroll is when the hobgoblin comes down from the moon on his Black Panther and loses his hat. And they use it as a bin where she throws the dictionary of outlandish words. Well, the outlandish words get some of the hobgoblin's magic and start sprouting as little creatures, and they escape and run amok through the house. And all kinds of adventures happen. And we also see Snufkin, one of my favorite characters, who's a bit of a wanderer. Tove also published many short stories. Tove painted all her life, her style maturing from the classical impressionism of her youth to the abstract modernist style of her later years. book of personal letters from Tove to her friends and family. It's got some very good biographical forward and information in it. Some historic notes as well of the times in which she was writing. Many of these letters were in Swedish and have been translated. We have a few very nice photographs of Tove as well. And here I will read a few letters selection. 1938. This one from Tove in Paris, writing to her mother. Beloved Mama, we're having our coffee on the terrace at the Capelade, while all around us people are already having their aperitifs. I expect you are at Bellinge now, you and Lasse, and Per Olaf is off on his sailing trip. I was supposed to write to you two long since, but I've been too tired in the evenings. Papa wrote yesterday while I went on piscine en plein air in Auteuil. I ought not to have left him alone, of course. When I got back, he started to cry. He'd been scouring the district for a postbox and a shirt for Lasse and hadn't found either, and was jumpy and upset and sick of everything. I understand him. He's really missing you now. Some bother over his ticket home. Little vexations, fatigue, they've all piled up in these final days. Anyway, this is an entirely natural reaction, and I know for certain that the relationship between Papa and me has changed. I've often felt that we were both so nervy we might burst into tears if anyone provoked us even slightly. But quand même, we've stayed good friends throughout, never annoyed or brusque, so I'm not too upset that these last days aren't exactly the happiest, and, for Papa, dominated by homesickness. For me, our time here has been a lovely, rounded experience, in which even sources of irritation and the dome have played particular, even important roles. I do so love Papa. Just now, he came dashing up from his room, where he's busy packing, for a drop of the vermouth we've parked with me, and to offload a Stefan Zweig book it would be risky to take to Germany. He's told you about the revised route for his journey, I assume. While he was here, he sheepishly handed over your present, the earrings and the little heart he'd overlooked in a corner of his suitcase. So sweet of you, thank you very much. They're just the earrings I've been looking for here, to go with my red necklace. Tove spent a lot of time traveling around France, sometimes with her mother, sometimes with her father. To Miss Eva Konikoff, New York, USA, from Tove, 1941. Dearest Konikova, I'm sitting at Columbia to write. I seem to remember we were here this time last year. As now, I just handed in my canvases for the Clarence exhibition at the Athenaeum. I sometimes feel as though I miss you more than Tapsa, even if it's childish to measure you two against each other these terms. Yearning can take 1,000 forms, but what I most need just now is a person of my own sex in my own generation, someone I'm close to. I've found in you wisdom of insight, life-affirming strength, a permanently burning flame that even in moments of depression and unconsciously lends others its fire. In this time of total upending of all concepts of justice, their attitude to existence, for young people to find a foothold, under the pressure of being obliged to keep quiet, anxious about their own circle, everyone hunches more deeply into their shell, the great events unfolding around us, rather than widening our horizons, have shrunk them into petty stubbornness. We get maniacally hooked on the phraseology of misdirected nationalism. On slogans, boundaries grow less and less flexible. Logic goes out of the window. But the old prejudices and principles continue to be defended in a chaos of monologues. All contact becomes impossible within a people that was already so reserved and pig-headed. "1942. She writes again to Eva Koniko. Eva, dearest, you have a new address now. I'm leaving home in September, moving out with my ration cards and wardrobe and the whole show. I've told Ham, and she can break it to Fafan at some suitable time. A very ordinary little scene gave me the last push. This has been growing for so many years. So much torment, guilt, and duty. So many inconsiderate outbursts arising from far too much misplaced effort to be considerate. You know what? My cave suddenly seemed so pointless. Perhaps I hacked my belated childhood deep into its galloping mammoths once and for all. And there it can stay, with the pirate's gold, in a glittering pile among the shells and the sand. The palisade of sun-bleached grey branches was never properly finished, and there's a bit missing from the paved courtyard and the wall up to the totem pole. But I got the roof covered, so it doesn't rain in on my goatskin, and I managed to plant all the wildflowers, some bones and a sun helmet that the sea threw up, a floor of sand and rounded stones, a blue lantern, and fantastical Negro emblems on the walls in the hut. White anemones. Damnation, it's hard after all to see some of it go, like when I come across old Technis drawings, wild and moody extravaganzas, and laugh and wonder what was I thinking of. And then, with a slight pang, I've forgotten. I've no access to that blossoming world of dreams any longer. I'm trying to establish myself in the real world. This one to Vivica. My darling, this evening I'm clearly and patently jealous. I who was so proud of my noble incapacity to experience jalousie. I have been standing here all day pasting gold flowers onto pale blue Christmas wrapping paper, and thinking as you once did, make them black. It's already late. I'm sitting in a corner at the Arbetarbladet, while Gudrun Morn makes up the paper and Atos writes the leader. My darling, it's as if I can't really be properly happy until you are here again. As if I have retreated deep into myself and am waiting there, leaving my umbrella-fixated friend-meeting, Christmas-rushing self to perform for the outside world. She performs well, laughs, takes an interest, and is genuinely involved, and yet she is not entirely present. When I was very young and very much in love, it was different. An unconscious dance, confusion, stimulation, and I let myself be carried away by it, unaware of what it was doing to me. After that came the safety margins, those little skills for attracting and keeping someone, the doubt and anxiety, the observing and weighing up. Now it's as if I have circled back to being the bewitched devotee who asks no questions, but bringing all that awareness with me. It hurts. I'm filled with happiness, that is true, but feeling so lonely it's tearing me apart. We must try to cope without each other for a while. It would be wretched if we couldn't. I wish you a truly auspicious trip, not remotely overshadowed by missing home, or perhaps just now and then by missing me. When you're by yourself and not working. Tove. P.S. After a long break, I have started a new chapter of Moomin 3. It's all about Tovsland and Vivsland and the Grog. This year's Moomin too has gone down very well. Tove's legacy is vast, becoming almost a national symbol of Finland. She won the Hans Christian Andersen Award for writing in 1966, and as national symbol in Finland, her Moomintroll have featured on coins and stamps. Tove died on the 27th of June 2001 at the age of 86 from cancer. She was buried with her parents and younger brother Lars at the cemetery in Helsinki. If you've enjoyed this journey into the world of Tove Jansson and you found it relaxing, please like and subscribe. And as always, if you have any questions or suggestions or requests, please leave a comment. In the meantime, be very, very good to yourself. Be kind to others.